This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, Trump just arriving in Britain after lighting up Angela Merkel and some of our NATO allies yesterday in Brussels. By the way, please do, Amy, keep us updated on Stormy Daniels' situation when she is released from prison.
I will let you know. Charged with a misdemeanor.
Yeah,
yes.
Very concerned about that. National
Her
security
mugshot's
issue as
out,
well.
by the way.
Yeah, no, it's lovely.
It is lovely.
Very
it's
tasteful.
One of the best mugshots.
Kudos to the police
The
department in whatever community she was in Ohio. It's
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, great photography. Well, sure, they've got a lot of experience doing mugshots for Ohio State football players.
Right, and all the athletes.
Yeah, right. So Trump, among other things, went off at breakfast while General Kelly was looking for an omelet about Germany and this pipeline deal with the Russians.
When Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries. And then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas.
And Senator Chuck Grassley, part of a Senate that sort of rebuked Trump's trade policy with a resolution yesterday, he generally liked what Trump said, if not necessarily how he said it in Brussels.
This president is following through with something that he said during the campaign, something he said last year at the same meeting, and so I think now that it ought to be sinking in that he means business, and it's also sinking in from the fact that at least every country to a lesser and thank God a few countries to a greater degree are increasing their spending on NATO. But I think the most important thing that he brings up, if NATO is to protect from Russia's advancement westward, then quite frankly, why are you helping the economy and helping Putin by buying natural gas from him? Yes. I think that's a stronger point.
I think that is a strong point. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Jed Babbin, former U.S. Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator. Jed, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hi, guys. Good morning.
Good morning. We'll keep you updated. We may have to break in if Stormy Daniels is released from prison.
I know. That's much more important than anything going on in national security.
That is correct. So what about Trump making the pipeline deal between the Germans and the Russians a real sticking point yesterday?
Well, he's right. The Russians send about 20% of Germany's gas via one pipeline called Nord Stream 1. They're about to double that with a second pipeline called Nord Stream 2. And the Germans are sending a lot of money to Russia for that, and they're becoming dependent on Russia for their gas.
Yeah, but why is that our business?
Well, it's our business because Russia, as the president said, we're trying to protect NATO from Russia, and our so-called NATO allies are filling Russia's coffers and buying natural gas from them. They're also, by the way, running a huge trade deficit with Iran. The Germans run a multi-billion euro trade deficit with Iran. Lord only knows what they're importing from there, but it's almost assuredly oil. So you have the biggest enemies that we have, not including China, being supported substantially by Germany, for one, and several other NATO countries. It's just the wrong thing for them to be doing. And all of this talk by Senator Grassley that the NATO countries are increasing their defense spending, hogwash. It ain't happening. It's not going to happen for at least 6 or 7 years, and that won't even happen then.
Yeah, and so then you layer on the fact that we're subsidizing their supposed contributions to the common defense. by the way, a common defense that Germany really isn't prepared to contribute much to. David French had a good piece on this too. We're not when Trump insinuates that Germany is too weak to participate in NATO's common defense, the German military. He's not talking about returning Germany to World War II military levels, but he is talking about things like, and French points this out in his piece in National Review, Germany's Tornado fighters jets not able to participate in NATO missions due to technological deficiencies and just the capacity Germany has, in addition to its complicity with the Russians on that energy deal.
Well, French ignores the principal problem. The German army is unionized, for heaven's sake.
Okay.
They had to pull out of a NATO exercise last year because their troops exceeded their allowed overtime hours. I mean, you just can't do this. You can't have a serious military at all if you're going to be pulling out because their overtime has been exceeded. I mean, come on, guys. This is not even realistic. So, yeah, okay, the German planes can't. Look, the German army couldn't put down a decent-sized riot in L.A. at this point.
Well, right, but
and you know,
but
I'm not in favor of rearming Germany, but that's above my pay grade. That was decided by Harry Truman and Winston Churchill right after World War II because the Soviet Union was the big threat. Well, you know, Russia is still a big threat, and Germany needs to pick up its end of the stick.
There you go.
One of the reasons by President Trump scolded other NATO members is to have them pay up. He's sick of paying the bill. And there was movement made because now our NATO allies are going to be increasing their defense spending. Do they need to even up it more?
Well, I mean, Amy, I don't think they're going to increase their defense spending. They keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, but they don't do it. Germany was saying, oh, well, we're going to increase our defense spending significantly this year. Well, they didn't. And the French are saying, well, we're not going up to 4% this year. We're going to smoke instead. We're going to enjoy our galois.
It's a great French accent.
Just isn't well, I can mock the French better than anybody. Hey, I'm the first guy to ever say when we were going to war in Iraq, going to war without France is like going deer hunting without an accordion. You just leave a lot of noisy, useless baggage behind. That was me. You can look it up.
That's a good line. I like that.
No, thank you. At the risk of being serious, you know, the French and the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians, I mean, all of these countries that we're supposed to be protecting, they're not helping us. One of the ideas of NATO was that we would provide a core defense posture, a presence in Europe around which they would form their own strong militaries. They haven't done it for 60 years. So what are we supposed to do? We can't get them to pay us to defend them. You know, they won't do that. I mean, they're sovereign nations and, you know, they're responsible for their own defense, but they're not going to do it themselves either. So we have to put a lot of pressure on them. Trump is doing the right thing. I don't know if he's doing it the right way, but, you know, that's Trump.
Yeah, and I mean, the polite way hasn't seemed to work, as you pointed out, so maybe a little bit more aggressive shaming, even as John Kelly is upset about the role selection at breakfast, is the way to go. The question is, though, is should he just keep sort of rhetorically beating them up on this, or should the U.S. consider pulling out of NATO?
Well, I think pulling out of NATO would be a terrible idea. I don't think the president wants to do that. He said this morning he wasn't going to do that, although he could. Frankly, he can't. NATO is a treaty. It was ratified by the Senate, and the president can't pull out of NATO just by himself. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is we have to get them, you know, by continued diplomatic pressure, by presidential rhetoric. We have to keep pounding on those guys to say, you guys are not holding your end of the deal up, and you've got to do it better. So we'll see what happens. I frankly am not at all optimistic about it because I just don't think they're going to do it.
What do you hope? President Trump landing this morning in London is going to be meeting tomorrow with Queen Elizabeth. And then he's off.
That's an important meeting.
That's going to be. Yeah. Then he's off to Russia. What do you think he hopes to accomplish with Putin?
Well, I don't know. He is certainly not agreeing, as he said this morning, to Russia's possession of Crimea. I think he wants to talk about Syria and having Iran withdraw from Syria, which frankly isn't going to happen. But I don't know what he's planning on beyond that. It's very troubling to me that the president has not taken a stronger stand against Putin and Russia, not only with respect to the business of the interference in the 2016 election, but all of the other things that Russia is doing. And Russia is highly active, trying to destabilize pretty much anywhere in the world that they can reach. And, they need to be brought back to reality a little bit. And I don't think the president's going to even try.
Well, so you're looking for a Reagan moment from Trump with respect to Putin. It's just this whole pipeline deal with Germany and Russia reminds of the 1982, exploding the pipeline that Maggie Thatcher wanted from Russia to Eastern Europe, to Western Europe, that President Reagan was opposed to because he wanted to punish the Soviet Union for their oppressive tactics in Poland. So does Trump need something like that?
He won't get it. I don't think he'll even try for it because, frankly, he's not Reagan. Trump's a pretty good president, but he does not have the vision and certainly does not have the ideology to propel him to do anything like that. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, were he to challenge the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, I think it would simply fail. I don't think that there's any way he can stop it. So I think at this point, to look for anything in Helsinki a lot better than we've seen before is unrealistic.
All right. Hopefully he takes at least a little bit tougher tack with Putin than Megyn Kelly did. That's my threshold. Clear.
No, I think you're right. And he needs to take a very tough approach to Putin. One of the continuing mysteries of his presidency is why he has not taken a stronger stand, called Putin out personally, talked about the fact that they aggressively, through aggression, they took over the Crimea. They're still at war in Ukraine.
Right.
And, they really should not be doing what they're doing. Again, they're destabilizing everything they can.
But President Obama, allowed Russians to annex Crimea. He didn't do anything.
I think that's on him. That's on Obama. But I don't think that Trump needs to make it easy for them by doing anything else. I think he's doing the right thing. We've been sending arms to Ukraine. I think we do need to do a lot more of that. And I think he needs to take the opportunity to criticize what Putin is doing in Syria, in Ukraine, and a lot of other areas at this summit meeting. He needs to be tough with Putin, and so far he's not been.
What did you take from Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin upon his return from a trip to Russia, talking about the need to focus on more targeted sanctions against oligarchs in the Putin inner circle as the best way to put pressure on the regime?
Well, it's one way to put pressure on the regime. It's a small way to put pressure on the regime. I like Ron Johnson, but, anytime something comes out of the House or the Senate, any mouth over there, I kind of sit back and yawn. So the fact of the matter is he is not deciding things, and I think the president needs to be much more critical of Russia and its movements around the world, and I think that's the way we can get back to some sort of better policy towards Russia, because frankly, right now, I don't think we have one. There's a lot of places in this world that are hotting up that we do not have a policy to redress.
He is Jed Babbin, former United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, now a contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator. Jed, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.